Dante is the face of Devil May Cry. He is the most iconic character in the series, which also means he is bound to appear in a lot of different video game franchises, such as Marvel vs. Capcom, Beautiful Joe, etc. So today we're gonna take a look at some of these different games and see how well they handled Dante, if they did him good, if they did him bad. So with that said, let's get into it. Starting off, we're gonna talk about Marvel vs. Capcom 3. This game is Dante's debut into the Marvel vs. Capcom series, and this is one of two games C appears in. We will talk about Infinite in a bit. But how was Dante handled in this game? Really well. Unfortunately, Marvel 3 doesn't have a story, so we can't really judge Dante from that point of view, but there is still plenty to talk about here. This version of Dante is based off Devil May Cry 3 Dante. His outfit is clearly taken from that game, and so is his whole weapon arsenal, and visually he looks really good. The DMC 3 outfit works really well with this game's art style, and the effects on his weapons are all beautiful. Once again, Dante retains basically his whole kit from DMC 3, including Rebellion, Cerberus, Agni and Rudra, Artemis, etc. And in gameplay, they managed to make it work incredibly well. Most of his moves are all reminiscent of Dante's moves in Devil May Cry 3, and they are translated into fighting game style incredibly well too. Dante also has the biggest moveset in the whole game, featuring about 25 different special moves, which is insane for a fighting game, and they made it work by having it so that Dante can only use certain special moves if he cancels another special move into the one that you want to use. I know that sounds confusing, so let me explain. For example, if you want to do fireworks with shotgun, you first have to do the input for reverb shock, and then during that move cancel into fireworks by pressing heavy attack. And Dante has a lot of moves that work like that, and it all works really well together and allows for some really sweet combos. Or even his supers are really cool references to the games, as Dante's level 3 super for example. He essentially just does stinger spam, which is what a lot of players do in Devil May Cry sometimes, which is awesome. Dante also has a theme in this game, and you're listening to it right now as the background music, and it goes so hard. It is a remix of Devils Never Cry, and it is so good. And of course, pair all that with Ruben Langdon's great performance here. Most of Dante's lines here are spoken in a calm and collected tone, and it works really well here. Sometimes you're gonna hear him shout, but most of his lines are spoken in a calm tone. You can hear that especially in his supers. And that's an important factor of Marvel vs. Capcom in general, as it just wouldn't be as satisfying if a character's lines were dull and boring. And Ruben does a really great job here. It is really satisfying hearing the jackpot at the end of Dante's level 1 super. Jackpot! And yeah, Dante overall in this game is really great. His design is amazing and works really well in this art style. His gameplay is insanely fun and filled with awesome references to DMC3. His voice acting is also superb, and the theme song just goes really hard, and I think this is a great adaptation of Dante. Let's see if the sequel to this game can also bring us a good Dante. Oh dear God, where do I even begin here? This version of Dante, well, it's certainly something. First off, we will actually talk about the story of this game and how Dante is handled there, so let's just get into it. Okay, so picture this, you launch Marvel Infinite story for the first time, and you play the first 3 fights and quickly realize how awkward and cringe everything is, until you eventually reach the intro of Dante. And at first glance, it's not all bad. Dante's just killing some dudes, and he does it in a fairly stylish manner.
7-6. 8-6. 9-6.
But then you hear the way he talks.
Come on, Hawkeye. Man, this is getting embarrassing.
And you quickly realize something's off. And I don't blame Langdon's performance at all. I do blame the voice direction in this game, as basically every character sounds so off in this game. But yeah, you hear his lines and think, why is he so awkward and cringe? Like, his lines in this story are so bad, it's not even funny. And then you take a look at how he looks, and it just makes you think,
what in the shitting hell is going on here?
His design is based off of Devil May Cry 3 again, but in this game it looks so much worse. And yeah, Infinite isn't exactly a pretty looking game in general, but Jesus Christ, Dante's look is basically unfinished. Like, what is going on with his face? He looks like he's been doing crack with this game's version of Chun-Li. Everything looks so bad, and I may be wrong here, so please do correct me if I am, but I heard somewhere that all they did with Dante is just copy and paste his model from Marvel 3 and just put it in Infinite, and that's all they did. They didn't bother tweaking it up for it to work with MvCi's art style, which sucks, by the way. But yeah, I might be wrong there, so do correct me if I am. But yeah, we ended up getting this mess. And you know you did something wrong when you make original Dante look worse than reboot Dante. How does that even happen? Which is funny because Dante's alternate skin in this game is reboot Dante, and he actually looks good because it's a fresh new skin they made to sell as DLC, which is so funny. Or even just the way he moves in the cutscenes, he just looks so awkward, like I don't know what's going on here. And even during gameplay, his effects while fighting, it's weird because some look absolutely terrible, while others actually look kind of better than Marvel 3. But we'll come back to this later, back to the story for now. But yeah, like I said, Dante just feels incredibly awkward and cringe in here. Like even something as simple as a scene where he high-fives Aaron and you just can't help but cringe at it. Or even when Dante has a critical moment in the story where he goes alone to fight Jeddah to get an Infinity Stone. It's just awkward. The whole interaction is just cringe.
Did you really think? Man, just stop talking. Let's do this!
And I feel that the way Dante is portrayed here is not very well either. In this same scene, Dante gets hit once, he gets stabbed, and it doesn't even look like a big stab either, it looks very powerless. And he just decides, nope, he's too strong, I can only defeat him if I pull my devil trigger, which is just what? I've never played Darkstalkers before. I've got no clue how strong Jeddah actually is, but I doubt one stab that doesn't even look that powerful could cause Dante of all people to have to empower himself to defeat him. So yeah, in the story, Dante is not good at all. His design looks terrible, his face especially, Jesus Christ. Voice sounds awkward and cringe, and I don't think he's portrayed well. But what about in gameplay? Design-wise, he still looks absolutely horrendous and as if he was on drugs or something. And as I mentioned earlier, when he fights, his effects are either absolutely disgusting or pretty nice. For example, the effects on Agni and Rudra and Cerberus are not good at all, while some of the electric effects on Nevin are actually pretty good. And Dante's voice lines during gameplay when he fights aren't terrible, I guess. They made him shout here more than they did in Marvel 3. In 3 he was more calm and collected, while here he shouts. There's still some of that calmness in there, but he definitely shouts more now. And it doesn't sound as bad as in the story. A lot of lines still sound pretty off, but I wouldn't say it's terrible. I'd say it's bearable to listen to. Again, no hate towards Langdon. He is the definitive Dante, but the voice direction in this game just wasn't it. And I much prefer the way he says lines in Marvel 3 by a long shot. Now, I've been pretty negative about this version of Dante, considering the best thing I've said about him so far is that the voice lines he says during gameplay aren't making my ears bleed, which is hilarious because this game is actually how I learned about Devil May Cry, which is great first impression, right? But Dante's one saving grace in this game is his gameplay. Dante is so lucky that he is incredibly fun to play in this game. But even that is literally just because the vast majority of his moveset in this game is literally just nabbed from Marvel 3 with a couple of tweaks here and there, which I don't even mind at this point because Dante in Marvel 3 was so much fun. So I'm fine with him having basically the same moveset with a couple of extra moves. Although some moves here do lack impact. For example, Dante's level 3 in Marvel 3, tongue twister. Dante's level 3 in Marvel 3 felt great and impactful, while in Infinite it feels weak, like almost no impact, which sucks. His battle theme also isn't too bad. It's another remix of Devils Never Cry where it sounds like the microphone was shoved underwater, but I quite like it. But other than that, not much good to say about this version. He looks terrible and unfinished, sounds cringy and awkward, he's not adapted very well in the story, and his only saving grace is his gameplay. So yeah, not exactly a good look for this one, is it? Let's see if the next one can do better. Featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series, Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. Dante serves as a side character in this game, but you are able to recruit him into your team and use him. More on that in a bit. In this game, he's based off of his Devil May Cry 2 design, but don't be alarmed, because just because he looks like Devil May Cry 2 Dante, doesn't mean he acts like him. He actually does have a personality here, and he's done really, really well. He's got plenty of one-liners and jokes that are all really fun to hear. Ruben Langdon, of course, plays Dante here and does a bang-up job. I do believe that he only plays Dante in the remastered version of this game. I couldn't find any info on who played him in the OG version, but I could only imagine it was Matthew Kaminsky who played Dante in DMC2. Dante's story here is also really interesting. He gets hired to kill you, but eventually becomes suspicious of his employer, so he tries to get to the bottom of what's going on and eventually ends up helping you, which is awesome. Yes, I know that was very poorly explained, but that's the gist of it. But yeah, you're able to hire him, and when you do, I love the nod to Dante's coin in DMC2, in which you have to pick either heads or tails, and depending on what you choose is how much you pay Dante. But if you're knowledgeable about DMC2, then you know that both sides of the coin are heads, so that's gonna help you win, which I love. Another thing I really love is the sequence where you essentially are playing a game of hide and seek with Dante as you're running through a labyrinth and Dante is trying to hunt you down. I think it's a really cool segment, And it's also kind of scary how it's the legendary Devil Hunter who you've been playing in the Devil May Cry games is now trying to hunt you down here. But yeah, I think it's a really cool segment. And then when Dante actually joins your side, he becomes a playable character. Now Shin Megami Tensei isn't exactly a hack and slash, it's a turn-based game, so Dante isn't exactly going to be pulling off triple S combos left, right and center. But even so, they did a pretty good job with Dante's moveset. He's got plenty of different attacks, most are clearly inspired by Devil May Cry 2. You can see that the best with his Rebellion attack because it's clearly the animation from Devil May Cry 2, but it's still really cool to see all this stuff in here. He's even got a skill where he actually does do a DMC2 simple combo where he launches himself into the air, shoots his guns and then he Helm Breakers, which yeah, you do that in DMC2 often, and yeah, that is pretty cool. And even in general, Dante works really well in the world of Shin Megami Tensei as it is filled with demons, so what better character to add than the best demon hunter around. He works insanely well. And obviously we can't forget that this is where the famous featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series meme came from, which bumps this Dante up a few points. So overall, I think this version of Dante is great. His story here is really interesting, his design is great and works really well in the world of Shin Megami Tensei. Say what you want about Devil May Cry 2, but we all have to agree that Dante's outfit in that game is amazing. And the fact that he's got a really great personality here unlike Devil May Cry 2 is also awesome. And even though Shin Megami Tensei's gameplay is completely different to Devil May Cry, they represent Dante's moveset really well here. Overall, I think this is a great iteration of Dante and probably his most iconic appearance outside of Devil May Cry. This one is pretty interesting, so let's just get into it. So this Dante is based off of Devil May Cry 1 Dante, and his design here is pretty great in my opinion. I think they did a good job putting Dante into the beautiful Joe world and art style. He looks really good. And his voice actor here is Drew Coombs, who voices Dante in Devil May Cry 1. And do correct me if I am wrong, but I believe that they literally just pulled lines from Devil May Cry 1 and used them in this game because they didn't have a big enough budget to hire more voice actors. So they just reused lines from DMC1 and played them in reverse during cutscenes.
They will someday rule if the evil is still alive.
And in gameplay even, you can hear the exact same grunts that Dante does in Devil May Cry 1. It does sound a bit weird though sometimes. So Dante's role here is basically that he has to save Trish. I do find it weird, however, and I don't know how to feel about this, that Dante and Trish are just, you know, making out at the beginning of Dante's story, you know, considering Trish looks exactly like Dante's mother, and so I find that weird. And yeah, I get that Dante and Trish are just model swaps for the main characters in the cutscenes, but still, it's weird. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. But yeah, Trish gets kidnapped and Dante has to save her. I'm not very knowledgeable about Beautiful Joe, but I do believe that this is how the main story of this game goes too. And I'm pretty sure that the levels are also exactly the same as in the main story, but that's besides the point. Now on to gameplay. Once again, Beautiful Joe isn't exactly a Devil May Cry, so not a hack and slash. So the gameplay here is really different to DMC. This is more of a side-scroller beat-em-up. A bunch of Dante's moves here seem to be new animations made for the game or just, you know, copy and pasted from Beautiful Joe's animations. His basic attacks got a lot of punches and stabs with his sword, but he does also have some nice callbacks to DMC1, such as using Inferno with Ifrit or Rantroop with Alaster. And some animations, specifically the one where it zooms in while Dante does some pokes with his sword, haven't aged that well. But again, it's an old game, so I guess we can forgive it. But other animations, like when he's shooting Ebony and Ivory in the air, still look pretty stylish. Majority of moves do look great, but there are some that are definitely showing their age. I also do not understand why Dante just randomly becomes naked at points for a few seconds and then gets his outfit back after a while. I'm very confused about that. I don't understand. Can you tell I've never played this game? And as I mentioned, a lot of the dialogue seems to just be reused from Devil May Cry 1, but what can you do? If you play Dante talking in this game in reverse, it's just gonna be some random line from Devil May Cry 1, which is really funny.
I'm his son, Dante. Dreams.
But yeah, overall decent. Some things I don't really like the whole making out with Trish thing or a few janky animations, but his design here is great and overall gameplay seems like a ton of fun. I've never played this, but it does look fun, and the callbacks to DMC1 are also really fun. And yeah, the reused lines can sound a bit off sometimes, but what can be done? Overall, I do like it. So yes, Reboot Dante has indeed managed to find a way into a game that wasn't DMC Devil May Cry. He was put in the PlayStation platform fighter Smash clone. And right off the bat we gotta dock some points for using the wrong Dante here in this game. And I get that they did this to promote the reboot. This game came out before the reboot did. But every single soul on earth would have preferred to have the OG Dante. But have they at least managed to make him accurate to the insufferable joke of a character that is Dante? Let's get into it. So starting off with his design, it's obviously the same design as the reboot. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the look, but it's translated fairly well into this game. The graphics may look a bit outdated now, but Dante still looks alright here. If anything, it just hasn't aged too well. His personality though? Well, why does he have more of a personality here than in his own game? He's more than just emo punk rebel boy who doesn't care and fails to be cool. And I find that weird because he doesn't even swear once in this game. In his own game, he can't go 30 seconds without swearing.
Fuck you!
Well, here the best way I could describe it as is if they took the personality of OG Dante and then took the personality of Dante and just fused them together. And I believe this was done because at the time the reboot wasn't out yet, so they didn't exactly know what to do with Dino's personality, so they just got OG Dante's personality and essentially tried to fuse it with the reboot one as best as they could. And since they weren't allowed to use the good Dante, this was their best bet. And I don't know, I actually don't really mind it. Again, it's weird not hearing him swear, but still. Like, some of the lines in this game that he says are literally just OG Dante's lines, but reboot Dante says them.
Adios, kid.
Adios, kid.
You cooled off yet?
You cooled off yet, kid?
But yeah, you can still get the feel of some of the emo-ness in there, but at the same time, you can hear him cracking some good one-liners from time to time. Kinda makes me wish he was like this in his own game. Then Tim Phillips is the voice here, and if you liked his performance in the reboot, then there shouldn't be much to complain about here. Some lines do sound kind of bland and dull, but overall, not too bad. And his gameplay here looks like a ton of fun and really flashy. The majority of his moveset was obviously pulled from the reboot. That's not a bad thing, of course, because the reboot is really fun. And his animations are really satisfying to see in this game. He mainly uses Rebellion, Ebony and Ivory, Osiris and Arbiter. And yeah, he's really well animated here and looks like a ton of fun to play. And Dino has a pretty big moveset here, and they made it work by having it so that you have to push your analog stick in different directions and then press like square, triangle, circle. And depending on which direction your analog stick is facing, Dante is gonna do a different move. And certain moves actually look better here than in the reboot, I gotta say. For instance, Rainstorm, right? Rainstorm looks terrible in the reboot, while here it actually looks pretty nice. Now, there isn't really a story mode here except an arcade mode with a cutscene at the beginning and end, which I don't really know how to feel about because they were kind of lame and the dialogue isn't really good too. Something about swords and guns not caring, so neither does he. Real edgy. Overall, I'd say he's okay. Design looks good, if anything it hasn't aged well in the game. Gameplay looks great and flashy. They got his personality wrong, but it kind of works. And I don't really like his story things. Would have liked the character more if it was OG Dante, but what can you do? But alright, that's some of the different Dante appearances outside of Devil May Cry. I know I didn't talk about certain ones like Smash Bros, but come on, that's literally just a skin. It's not worth talking about. Or Project X Zone, but I got the majority of the major ones out of the way. So before we head off, let's put them in a ranking to see which one, in my opinion, is the best Dante appearance outside of Devil May Cry. So at last spot we have Marvel vs Capcom Infinite, where Dante looks horrendous, sounds cringy enough, just feels awkward, and his only saving grace being his gameplay. Then at second to last place, PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale. Here I just wish they included original Dante instead of Dino, which was there to promote the reboot. His personality isn't correct, but it kind of works, so I don't really mind it. His story stuff was not interesting and really edgy, just like in the reboot. Voice acting isn't too bad, if anything some lines sound off, and gameplay looks like a ton of fun. Then at number 3 we have Beautiful Joe. Gameplay wise, ton of fun. Good bunch of references to Devil May Cry 1. His design looks great and works really well. Voice acting, well, it seems most of the lines were taken from DMC1, so can't complain there. Even if the cutscenes where he talks in reverse sound weird. Story is basically just Beautiful Joe's main story, but with Dante and Trish, which is cool, though him making out with Trish is really weird. And I don't really understand why he keeps losing his clothes in gameplay. Then at number 2, and I might get cooked for this, Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. Yes, this is definitely Dante's most iconic appearance outside of Devil May Cry, with this being where the featuring Dante from the Devil May Cry series meme comes from. And don't get me wrong, he's really great here. His design pulled from DMC2 works great, and they gave DMC2 Dante an actual personality, which is also great. Ruben Langdon delivers a great performance, and in gameplay, even if it's completely different from DMC, they did a really good job showing off a lot of different Dante moves. But my personal favorite appearance of the legendary Devil Hunter outside of DMC is Marvel vs Capcom 3. Dante is insanely fun to play in this game. His moveset is so good, and all the animations and effects still look absolutely beautiful. DMC3's Dante design works really well in MvCi 3's style, and once again, Ruben Langdon's voice here is so good. But okay, that's gonna be the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, of course, leave a like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.